Hey everyone, welcome to another Marvel Time. This is issue number 44. We are creeping up on issue number 50. I think we should delay a couple weeks so that issue number 50 falls on 616. I think that would work out nicely. But
I like that.
But I also don't want to skip a couple weeks of reading comics. So, kind of probably just going to roll with it, I
You
think.
can still read them without talking about them.
No, I can't do that. So obviously, as you can see, things are a little bit different again today. We don't have Benji here, so Kyle is filling in again.
Second time in 3 weeks, I guess, because the last one was 41.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So 2 episodes of Benji, and now Kyle is back. Yeah. So Kyle, I know you got to read 3 out of the 5 comics, correct?
Yeah. Once again, I failed to binge all of them before I had to appear.
So we will be discussing 3 of these at length and having Kyle guess what the other 2 are based on the cover again.
Sounds good.
So
I feel like we should play How Much Is That Cameo too, just to really lively.
Let's jump into this week's comics, starting off with Spider-Woman number 11. What did you? This is one that you got to read, right? So what did you think?
This is one that I got to read, and in fact, is actually my pick of the week.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed this. It was a very simple story, a lot of humor, and I guess you'd call them sight gags, even though they're comics, so there's not really another option. But I loved the kind of back and forth between these, not villains, but the people that she's fighting. I thought was really fun. And I think my favorite line was she's like, "Don't you know who I am?" He's like, "I think we've established that I do not." And yeah, and throwing a steak, all good things. So I thought this was a lot of fun. I'll say I'm not very familiar with this character, but I liked her vibe, just kind of oblivious to everything except her duty as Spider-Woman, it seemed.
Yeah. As this cover will let you know, this is a very good introduction to this character. I mean, this gives you a very good idea of who she is, really. She is very, very humorous in a lot of ways, but yet, in that the true, staying true to the Spider name, feels that sense of responsibility and follows through on that. There was definitely a very complicated story for her leading up to this, but this is sort of the reset now that we're going to get into a new story moving forward with her. So, I really like this issue too. It was close to my pick of the week. This is the one I started off reading with today, and it was a nice, simple story to start off with. It was very easy. There was a lot of action, and like you said, a lot of gags. It was a very funny issue, very lighthearted. Some interesting new quote unquote villains that were also Ohio, yes. Yeah, so it was interesting characters. It was a funny story. I like the addition of slicey wings to her costume. That was a nice, fun panel there. Hint, hint for a future story coming up. I think Jessica Drew getting back to this simple form of the character. I think she's a very relatable character. Like you said, like very much in what she's doing as a superhero and oblivious to everything else. And I think that's, we can all relate to that, right? Like we all just get that tunnel vision on our job in some way at some point and forget everything else. And it's sometimes. So I really like this, and I'm excited to see some more of this story going forward as well. So our next one is going to be the Mighty Valkyries. You did not get to read this one, correct?
I did not.
All right.
So we'll play our game. I'm guessing, is that supposed to be Hela?
It is, yes.
Okay, so I got that, and slightly familiar with the Valkyries, so I feel like I have a leg up here. I couldn't tell you more about, but this is number 1, so that's interesting. Are they fighting Hela or teaming up with Hela? She's kind of in the background, so I feel like they'd be fighting against her.
You're not wrong or right on that one. She kind of has a different role and teases things going forward, I think, but still it doesn't really give us an answer as to what the relationship will be. But I liked this issue more than I expected to. I haven't been crazy about the Valkyrie issues because Asgard gets a little bit complicated, and there's some weird stuff happening with the Valkyries. That being said, everything with Jane Foster I liked a lot. I thought her story is very interesting. As the cover lets you know, Loki makes an appearance. There's a magical wolf that is fighting them. So there's a lot of fun stuff here. Jane Foster's a great character. We get a cameo from Doctor Strange in here too. There's a lot of stuff going on. Then they get into another story on one of the other Valkyries, and that one I didn't enjoy quite as much. It takes it off Earth, gets into some other complicated things that just kind of confuses things a little bit. So I liked this issue overall, but I definitely liked the first half of it more.
Fair. I mean, I didn't read it, but I've experienced that with another book we'll talk about.
Yeah, yes, I have an idea of what you're talking about. I am very interested to see where this goes with Hela, because, like I said, they don't really give you an answer as to, is she the villain going forward? Is she, in a very different role from what we have seen from Hela in the past? I'm definitely interested. And hopefully we focus more on Jane Foster going forward. Our next one is going to be Avengers number 45. And this is really interesting because as Benji and I have talked about over recent weeks, this the Avengers stories, they've obviously been tied into King in Black, but they've also had their own thing going on with the Phoenix. And I'm not entirely sure how the timelines have matched up, but now we get sort of the aftermath of both. So I like that was featured in here. You did get to read this one, correct?
Yes.
All right. And what were your thoughts?
I really liked, or thought it was like kind of a fun framing device at the beginning, as it kind of takes you from character to character before you kind of land on Black Panther for a while. I thought that was kind of fun. And then it kind of shifts gears after that, and then it focuses a lot on Blade and a little bit on Phoenix, like you were saying. And this is the one where I felt like I definitely enjoyed the beginning more than the second half. It just got it started off with a bunch of characters I know and then switched to ones that I didn't as much. So I'm sure that's, there's definitely just some new bias there. And even this cover doesn't really, it makes sense now that I've read it, but I'm like, oh, do I even know any of these Avengers? Like, I assume that's Blade, but I don't see my other guys. So it was kind of refreshing at the beginning, like, okay, cool, I know these people, and then kind of veers off from that. So then,
yeah, that's fair. I mean, this cover doesn't really give you much as to what this is going to be about. I mean, obviously lets you know that this is more or less tying into King in Black. Like I said, it ties into two different stories. But I expected that when you said that you had one of the stories that fit that same mold. I thought the opening to this was hilarious, as you're seeing all the Avengers training, and it was like Steve Rogers broke the world record for fastest mile, and he's just like, delete from records, played 1940s Dixie jazz and something like that.
Yeah, the Tony Stark one played Dad's Exasperated Size or something like that.
Yeah, there was a lot of really funny gags in the very beginning.
I was wondering if it was Steve Rogers. I actually wasn't 100% sure. I was going to ask you.
That's a fair question when it comes to Captain America. But
I also like his little extra mask that he had at the end.
Yes. Yeah, well, yeah, we'll get into that too. But typically my go-to rule for deciding who Captain America is, just look at the hair. If it's blonde, it's usually Steve Rogers.
Okay.
I will say I really like the villain at the center of this, because looking at this, I totally understand where you're coming from. Like, looking at this, like, are you going to recognize any of these characters? It helps a lot when the big vampire guy at play here is just Dracula. Like, everybody knows who Dracula is, right? Like, it makes it a little bit simpler to follow, I think.
But what kind of Dracula?
We'll save the community references for Zach's life.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I like getting Dracula into this big story. I thought that was fun. I'm not the biggest Blade fan, even if it is a fantastic vampire movie. But I liked this issue. I like where this is going. I like I said, I like that it connected both of those two Avengers stories. We don't get a whole lot of what's going on with the Phoenix, but they do set up, some things. They set up a relationship for Maya Lopez. So that's exciting. I'm curious to see where that goes. I want to see more from like what's going on with Dracula. And the idea here is that Dracula has established with the UN his own nation in Chernobyl. So that's what you were talking about with Captain America getting that extra little mask, going to this radiation heavy, location, has to protect himself. So that was pretty cool. And then there's a special role for Blade to play in that story going forward. And I'm looking forward to see how that goes.
Because he's for, what do they call it? I forgot. Genocide. He wants to kill the vampires. So yeah, that's, guilty.
Yeah. It's a fine line to walk there for sure. Our next issue is Amazing Spider-Man, and this is number 64. Continuation of the story we've been talking about on here for a while now.
Looking at this cover, I feel like I didn't read the right book, but I did.
Yeah. This was definitely. It's weird because there's sort of this bigger story going on, and then the last few issues have gotten into like a sort of a different like tangent, and the cover is still dedicated to that bigger story, whereas this specific issue didn't cover that really at all. So kind of interesting. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this one before I dive into it.
Well, my first thought was, for a Spider-Man book, not a ton of Spider-Man. I'm also very curious about this suit that he has, because it's not the one we see on the cover. It seems like it's electrified. Is that fair? I mean, it definitely has like aesthetic of electricity. I don't know if that's right, but
yeah, no, there are enhancements to the suit for sure, but we've never really gotten a full breakdown of what the suit does. It's kind of funny. It's a suit given to him by whatever the new name of the new company that J. Jonah Jameson runs, that is allowing him to basically live stream everything he does, and he's becoming this sort of pop culture personality right now. So that's an interesting, different story going on with Spider-Man here that we don't really get into in this issue. But as far as the other abilities of this new suit that you don't see on the cover here, we don't really know. We never got a full rundown.
All right. Yeah. Well, then I guess I'm pretty much just as in the dark. I thought this had some okay moments, some fun fight stuff, but overall, it was one of those where I just kind of felt lost. And I also admittedly rushed through it because I think I finished reading it about 4 minutes before we were supposed to go on the air. So I probably didn't absorb as much as I could have had I taken my time. But it wasn't as instantly grabbing me as Spider-Woman did.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Like I said, this is sort of telling a story within a story, and we are on part 6 of that story. So jumping into this issue, yeah, it makes sense that a lot of it wouldn't, stick with you or resonate at all, because you're just missing a whole lot of context that goes into it. So yeah, that makes sense. This isn't the best spot to jump in. I did like this issue. I think it was a good continuation of what we got. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, knowing the comic release schedule, probably a couple weeks ago. I'm not entirely sure what Wilson Fisk's goal is, as is usually the case with the Kingpin. I mean, he tends to play things close to the vest. You don't really know what his end game is. There's some stuff happening with Kindred still, and I'm not sure what he can hope to gain from that. So we'll have to wait and see. And speaking of, this did have one of the more exciting endings of the week, and right on cue too, because as I finished this issue, we got the information about the upcoming comic arc Sinister War that is going to, I guess, be what's up next for Spider-Man, and involve Dr. Octopus in some way. So check out the end of this issue for sure before Sinister War comes out, because I'm looking forward to it. I think the ending of this was very exciting, and another exciting Spider-Man story arc coming up. And our final issue of the week, the reason for this shirt today, and as you can tell by process of elimination, my pick of the week, Way of X. as I've said on here before plenty of times, the X-Men titles or the mutant-related titles are typically not my favorite. So I was very surprised at how much I really, really enjoyed this book. Before I get too into it, though, Kyle, what's this book about?
Well, I'll say I was also, you first of all warned me that we might have a lot of X-Men stuff, which ended out not be true, except we had this. And I let you know that I was pressed for time, in which you said, well, then you might want to skip this one because it's the longest one. And then when I opened the app and got my books, I was disappointed because this one looks awesome. I really like this cover art. Obviously, you have Nightcrawler. It looks like you got kind of a stained glass thing in the background. I really like. Um, I don't know what it's about, but I'm going to read it after this. So,
Yeah, I think this is actually a good issue. I mean, there's some stuff going on with X-Men right now that is complicated if you have just the basic knowledge of the characters. Things have changed for mutants in recent years, with going back to House of X and Powers of X comics a couple years ago at this point now. I think actually just over a year ago. So things are definitely different. But this is, aside from that, a good starting point to get into this story without having to read, the last year and a half of comics. This cover is more or less paying homage to the first 3 pages of this issue. So it goes into a lot of different stuff beyond this, except for the fact that Nightcrawler is the focal point. And I thought that was a really cool choice. So one of the big aspects of what's happening with mutants right now is they live on this mutant island of Krakoa, and they have figured out how to resurrect themselves after they die. So obviously with comic books, that's not really an issue to begin with, but for them, they're cheating death more or less. And so there's all of these young mutants who are growing up in this environment, and to them, death is nothing. And so they are literally talking about dying for the first time as if it's like this, like peer pressure kind of thing. Like, oh, you haven't died yet. Like that's, something we've done so many times now. And so Nightcrawler is kind of noticing that the younger mutants are living this way and treating life like it's nothing, more or less. Like they can just throw it away and then just come back the next day. And so Nightcrawler, being the religious character that he is, has issues with that. And Charles Xavier uses him as sort of the focal point for how to move away from that. And I think it's a really, really interesting concept that goes so far beyond anything I would have thought we would see in these X-Men comics, because it's sort of just comic characters die and come back to life all the time. You don't even really think about it. But what is the effect of the culture if that is something that's expected? And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Well, it sounds cool. I'm excited to read it. And I just have to say that Nightcrawler is a BAMF.
And I will not break down what that stands for. Also, it has a great cliffhanger ending too. So really excited.
The noise he makes when he transports. I don't know what you're talking about.
True. That's a fair point. But yeah, I often not really excited to see what happens next with the mutant-based comics. This one I am. I'm definitely looking forward to it. So that is it for our comics for the week. This is typically where Benji and I will talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier a little bit. People are probably tired of hearing me talk about it. Do you have any thoughts you want to share on last week's episode?
I'll just take on the specific part. I thought it was interesting that specifically Becca, had a bit of a different take than you and I did when we talked on Zacks of Life about Isaiah and Sam's meeting. I still don't know exactly where I fall on that. Like, I was pretty set in my interpretation, and Becca's was a little different. So basically we're just deciding what was Sam's intention? Was he going to give Isaiah the shield? Was he just wanting to talk to him and announce that he was going to be becoming Captain America? And I don't know the answer to that. So it's I don't think we're going to get an answer to it. Like, it's not one of those things that needs to be answered.
Right.
But I thought it got me thinking more about the episode and got me to reflect more on the episode, and really enjoyed it. I'm looking very much forward to Friday and seeing him in this suit.
This suit that we think is in that crate.
Something's in the crate.
So you mentioned then obviously you watched Marvel Monday, so I put Becca on the spot. I'm not going to let you off the hook. Give me one prediction for the finale.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see him in the suit. But you had a very specific thing, which was the Hydra card, right? That's your prediction.
That was actually I didn't even think about that. I made that prediction on Zacks of Life, and then again on Marvel Monday. But no, my prediction is going to be that we're going to see Zemo meet with Thunderbolt Ross. I think that's what that's what I'm hoping to see at least.
Gotcha. I think we haven't seen the last of Lamar.
Oh, okay, very interesting. Yeah, that would definitely throw a wrinkle in there.
Yeah, it sure would.
And for those of you who haven't listened yet, if you want to hear me and Kyle talk more about Falcon the Winter Soldier, check out latest episode of Zacks of Life, or the last 5 episodes of Zacks of Life at this point, I guess. So you can check that out, watch the finale on Friday, and we'll have another episode breaking down the finale next Monday. And an even deeper dive on Monday with me and Becca Burbank, breaking down last week's episode, and then, of course, next Monday, the finale. Let's get into some Marvel news from the past week. And the biggest news was, of course, the teaser we got a couple days ago for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. What were your thoughts on this teaser?
Well, first of all, Kevin Feige pronounced it Shang-Chi. So we were kind of falling somewhere in halfway in between. I'm going to say Shang-Chi.
All right.
But anyway, I really liked this trailer. I thought it had a lot of, familiar Marvel elements, but then a lot of new visuals and kind of dynamics than we're used to seeing. And I thought it came together really well. I liked the soundtrack. The soundtrack kind of reminded me of those early Black Panther teasers, but thought it came together really well. I was a little confused. I don't know if it's just like a timeline thing, the way that the trailers cut versus what actually happens in the thing. But Aquafina's character's relationship with Shang-Chi was kind of confusing because they're friends, but then she's like, "Who are you?" And I didn't know if she could just be playing that up. I don't know, but that was like the one part where I was like, "Wait a minute, aren't you supposed to be like cool?"
Yeah, there might be some timeline stuff happening there, and we were talking about it a little bit before we started, and who knows what information Marvel is actually giving us in these teasers. We don't know. People might not be what they seem. I mean, I'm not just talking about Skrulls this time. There could be a lot of other things happening.
This week, Skrull.
Yeah, I will say though, I'm excited. The action in that trailer, or the teaser, I suppose, looks fantastic. It's going to be very different, like you said. There's a lot of familiar elements. Obviously, it's an action movie at its heart, like just about every Marvel movie is, and but it's still different. It's a kung fu movie, which is so different and exciting. And I love the fighting style, and I think the cast is great too. I think we're in for a really, really fun movie.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of possibilities, and you can just easily see how after this solo, how he can fold into the rest of the MCU gang. I guess
Yeah.
they're still Avengers. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question to see too. We haven't really gotten an answer on that, but maybe at the end of Falcon the Winter Soldier. Speaking of trailers, this one was not MCU related, and it just dropped before we came on today. New trailer for the Hulu animated series on MODOK, which I think looks hilarious. I cannot wait. The character is so ridiculous and over the top, and Patton Oswalt voicing him just makes it that much better. I thought this trailer was really, really funny. And May 21st, I believe, is the release date for that one. So I'm really looking forward to that. Are you going to watch MODOK?
Probably. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to watch this trailer yet, but I did see the previous like little clip that they released a while back. It definitely looks fun. Although every image that they release of him, he's just making the same face. And I'm like, I feel like I'm seeing the exact same thing here. But no, it definitely looks fun, and Adult Swim meets Marvel. So
yeah, it does have very Adult Swim vibes to it. So I'm excited. It's definitely not what you would expect from Marvel, from if you're just a fan of the MCU, but it's definitely going to be fun too. I'm looking forward to it. Back to the MCU, some exciting casting news, or reported casting news. I guess we haven't gotten an official word just yet, but 2 additions to the cast of Marvel's Secret Invasion. Olivia Colman, which we learned a couple days ago, and then just yesterday, Emilia Clarke, which had me very excited. I am really looking forward to that. Any thoughts on these 2? I mean, obviously you have some recognition of Emilia Clarke.
Right. Well, I was going to say, I felt like, we kept saying there needs to be a term for people who do Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and Disney, just because that was like such a rare club, or like, check them off your list, almost like EGOTs. And now it feels like they're almost exclusively just picking from each other, because Emilia Clarke was in Solo.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's coming over to Marvel, presumably. Same thing with we got some other recent casting news that was also like a couple of people who had been in Star Wars. I forget what that was for though.
Phoebe Waller-Bridges was jumping to something. Indiana Jones, I believe.
Yes, yeah, that Indiana Jones, and Mads Mikkelsen, who was also in one of the Star Wars stories. So yeah, I thought that's kind of funny. And then another Oscar winner potentially coming to the MCU with Olivia Colman. So can't go wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, adding just amazing talent to this cast to go along with what's already there. And I will say the main antagonist of the Secret Invasion story comic arc is the Skrull Queen Varanki. And, Emilia Clarke has some experience playing a queen. So there you go. Just throwing that out there. I would love that casting for sure.
Scales like Skrulls.
See, I mean, there you go. Getting back to comics, we had quite a bit of comics news over the last week. A lot of stuff coming in July. But first, I want to talk about the fact that we got the results of the first ever X-Men vote, which was really cool news when that was announced a few months ago, that fans actually got to vote to decide the last member of this X-Men team with the new comics coming out. And Polaris was named the final member of the team. So I thought that was a good choice. I voted for Banshee, but Polaris is a good second option there. So,
is this the only time they've done this, or I felt like they did this with another group, or it was just the X-Men? For some reason, I was thinking Guardians of the Galaxy when we talked about it the other day, but I guess it's probably just the X-Men.
I mean, there were definitely some new additions to the Guardians of the Galaxy. If there was a fan vote, they did not make it very public. I can tell you that.
Or maybe it was just revealed who the last person was, but it wasn't a vote thing. Maybe that's what I'm confusing it with.
That's probably what it was. Like I said, lots of comics coming up in July, or actually just Marvel products in general coming up in July. So the first one we'll talk about is a new novel that will be following Miss Marvel, Iron Man, and the Guardians of the Galaxy. And this is called Target Kree. And that'll be coming out July 6th. I really, really like the idea of this story. I think that's a very interesting, different group of characters. Miss Marvel is the one especially that, she seems very earthbound to me. Mm-hmm. And now we're having her team up with the Guardians and Iron Man and fighting the Kree. I think this is a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, big graduation for her.
Yeah. And I mean, the character has just been taking off over the past year or so. We know she has her own series coming up on Disney Plus, and then was the main subject of the Marvel's Avengers video game as well. And we know how much that actress charges on Cameo if you listen to Zacks of Life.
Yes.
One of the comics I am most excited about is coming July 7th. They announced World War She-Hulk. Are you familiar at all with the World War Hulk storyline?
Yes, I have never read it, but I'm got the overall.
Yeah, so that was a really, really cool story arc where after the Hulk had been banished to another planet, which led to Planet Hulk, following that, he came back and, in true Hulk fashion, was not very happy and decided to take on his fellow heroes. So now we're getting a new story with She-Hulk at the center of it. So that's going to be really interesting. We know She-Hulk in the current Avengers story arc has kind of taken the role of Hulk. So I think that'll be really cool. Cool to put her in the spotlight before we get the She-Hulk series on Disney Plus as well.
Yeah.
Another comic coming July 21st, we got The Last Annihilation, which will involve the Guardians of the Galaxy and a mystery enemy that we don't know about yet. They blocked them out on the cover, so we'll have to wait and see when they reveal that. And for those of you who are familiar with the Annihilation story arc, that was another one that was really huge and very popular. So I'm really excited to see how this ties in to that. If it does, maybe it's only in name. I'm not sure, but I would love to see Annihilus play a role in this for sure. And given the ending, the surprise ending of last week's Guardians of the Galaxy issue, I'm really excited for this now. And finally, July 14th, Marvel is expanding on their Alien comics with Aliens Aftermath, which is going to be pretty much a direct sequel to the movie Aliens, which I think is really, really cool concept, just building off of that classic movie. Interesting that they chose the sequel to go off of. I know it's an anniversary year for the sequel, but I'm looking forward to it. I think the sequel had some great characters in it. Not many of them are still alive, but I'm very interested to see where they go from here.
I've never seen any of the Alien or Aliens movies, but I think sounds like a cool prospect, and it's cool that the opportunities that all these different mergers over the time have allowed for.
Yeah, it is definitely very cool. I'm really looking forward to the Predator comics when we get those. I still have to pick up the first Alien comic that released a few weeks back. And now that you mention it, it's been a long time since I watched those first two Alien movies. I got to go back and revisit those pretty soon. So that'll do it for another Marvel time. Kyle, thank you for filling in and managing to get through 3 comics today before we got on.
Thank you. Yes, I'll have to get back to you and let you know what I thought of the X-Men one.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many X's, I forgot what the name was temporarily.
Way of X was that
Way
title.
of X. I was going to say House, and I'm like, nope, that's not it.
Nope, that was one of the older ones. That did set the stage for this one. But like I said earlier, check out Zacks of Life, available pretty much wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find us on laughingplace.com as well. Breaking down Falcon the Winter Soldier, we drafted the best non-MCU Marvel movies, so that was a fun addition. And then, like we alluded to, How Much Is That Cameo, our new segment on there too, so that was fun. So check that episode out. We'll be back next week.
And our guest was Benji, so if you're missing him this week, you can get your Benji fix.
Of course, Marvel Monday will be back on Monday to break down the finale of Falcon the Winter Soldier. We will be back on Marvel time to discuss some more comics. I assume Benji will be back next week to discuss some comics. But in the meantime, you can also join Alex later on today with his Earth Day Eve. I'm not entirely sure what that is going to entail, but it should be fun. And then, of course, the Laughing Place news video coming out later today as well. So we will see you guys again next week. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Bye.
Bye.